Toxic masculinity. It's been well bandied around in the social media realms. As a male, I'm really tired of having this toxic masculinity bandied round about men that we're the problem. Today I'd like to look at where does toxic masculinity come from. Toxic masculinity isn't about blaming men, it's about trying to free us. Free us from the emotional cage, from the performative strength, the mask that we men have sort of been conditioned, socially conditioned. Looking at toxic masculinity, what's underneath the toxicity, where does that come from, and how do we as men, or not all of us are toxic, some are, and we have to put our hands up. It's not the greatest identity to have as men, and I think we're all tarred with that brush because of, X, Y, and Z. Now, if we don't address this toxic masculinity that is in the system, there are men that are walking around, but let's be honest, most of us men walking around, we aren't walking around thinking we're toxic. It's sometimes that toxic, the disconnect that we men, the emotional disconnect. We have disconnected relationships, we have bottled up rage, we can sometimes feel numb when everything looks good on the outside. The real damage of toxic masculinity isn't just to others, but it's also to ourselves. And to me, working in therapy for years, one on myself and two with others, that the emotional material that we've repressed can get quite toxic in that repression or suppressing it in the shadow. We wear armour to cover it all up, and instead of suppressing that emotion, how do we start to really start talking about it? Toxic masculinity isn't saying that masculinity is bad. What could be part of our toxic masculinity is some of the outdated belief systems that we men don't cry, real men dominate, not connect, vulnerability is a weakness, you're soft cock, yada yada yada. These are old messages, and one of the playlists on this channel is new masculinity. This old method keeps us stuck in roles that used to be about survival, but now they're causing us suffering, and they're causing our gender suffering. True masculinity isn't rigid. It's not about control. Deep masculinity is a beautiful thing because it's flexible. It includes both realms, strength and softness, leadership and humility. New masculinity, our deep masculinity, is not about performance, it's about our deep presence. Now, in that deep presence, we need to be present to ourselves and start unlocking some of that old painful hurts that could come out as poison. How do we break free from these chains? The first one is perhaps we need to start to identify some of the rules we inherited growing up as a kid. Ask yourself, what did you learn as a man should be? Where did it come from? Was it your family? Was it your culture? Was it school? Your sports? When we start to name the belief, it gives you the power to question it. Step two is, let's start with micro moments of honesty. We don't need to spill our guts to everyone, well, our heart to everyone. But what if you could say, look, I'm feeling off today, instead of that social throw off, I'm good, I'm fine. Hey, today I'm not feeling the greatest. These tiny moments break that performance mode of, I'm good, and invites in something real. Step three, surround yourself with men who get it. our healing, yeah, a lot of it does happen deep down within ourselves, but it doesn't happen alone. We need to join spaces where men are real, where our emotions aren't treated as a weakness, but as a deep inner wisdom within ourselves. Connections to others, other men, is like a medicine. It's like a journey, not a competition. And as we men heal together, how empowering would that be to finally, hey guys, we can break through this label of toxic masculinity. It isn't about rejecting our manhood, it's about owning our manhood, owning our masculinity on our terms. Our authentic masculinity is beautiful. And we get to decide what kind of men we want to be, and we can lead with integrity, not intimidation. We can open our hearts to others, we open our hearts to ourselves, we open our hearts to others, and we're actually healing the deep wounds that perhaps where some of that toxic rage may come from. We're all carrying hurts. Our partners carry hurts, our friends carry hurts. Because we're carrying those hurts, we're not broken. If we start to heal them, we're breaking through that reactive, angry, horrible personality traits that we can all carry. And yet, men, we've had some beautiful role models, but God, we've had some shit ones over the years. How do we collectively as men begin to look at when we are being triggered? Instead of giving people a spray, how do we look at, what's been triggered underneath? Is the poison, that real raw, hurtful emotion, is that coming out as in a toxic manner? Probably. How do we notice that and stop and look in and do the healing underneath that? Because the more we do our healing, the more we're able to access that deep, authentic, beautiful masculinity that is empowered. It doesn't need to have control to self, others, and all that is, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Be gentle and enjoy.